Greetings, everyone. Thank you for joining myself on Keep the Testimony Alive, trusting that you are doing well and you have been enjoying all of our episodes so far in the month of February. We have been celebrating Black History Month, and it has been so enlightening, exciting, invigorating, inspiring, all these wonderful names that you can think of. I've learned so much, and my guests that have been on, my co-hosts, and my family. Again, they'll be joining me tonight. Just asking them to come on in. My family, Katura Morris is with us again. God bless you, Jonathan. You're here. Anybody else is coming on? Like the whole family? I think I had asked your father, my Valentine, which was yesterday, to come in. I guess if he's tied up in meetings, but he'll come in if he can, shortly maybe. But hasn't this been awesome? This has been really, really good. We have, this is our part three now, and this has been so, I'm just so inspired. I feel like I want to get out there and just change the world and do something, with all my abilities and my giftings. And tonight we're talking about contributions of uh, Blacks, great contributions because it has changed our world. And we are so grateful, and we want to keep these testimonies alive by bringing them on this platform. I know somebody might be saying, well, this is not a testimony, but yeah, it is a testimony to the fact that these people have um, uh, done these great contributions. And so we're here. We've read about them, and most of these contributions, what they have done, it has even changed our lives, and it continues to do that. I wanted to start out just reminding us, please, to all our viewers, that you share. You do your best and just keep sharing, sharing, sharing. Keep the Testimony Alive program. There's many people out there that could use this information and they don't know that this program is here. So we're asking you, please, if you can help us as we help you, because you don't want to keep this information to yourself. So please make sure you share, make sure you also subscribe, you hit that notification button so you always know, when we are coming on. All right. So I did say that, myself, this program, we would be doing episodes every week this month, and so far we've kept our word. I know tonight we were looking at, hopefully, we were hoping to look at the Black church, and that's not going to happen, unfortunately. But nevertheless, we still are bringing you some really good information. Some of you may know it already, and if you don't, then hence you're hearing this. And I do encourage all of us to just do our own research, go online. There's so much information, Brother John Chura. There's so much information that you can just find on your own. You don't even have to leave your home to get this information. Gone are the days where we had to go to the library every week, for assignments, etc. Now you just have to open your computer, open your laptop, your iPad, whatever it is, and just get online and Google and just put in some information, and away you go. There's so much information there for all of us. So again, thank you for being on this program. You folks are getting to be, a common face on the program, and that's fine. That's wonderful. I wanted to start this episode tonight by with a little humor. There's a story out there. A friend of ours, one of our members, I'm going to call her name Islyn Thompson, and she'll be watching this. So, yep, I'm going to give it up to you, Islyn. You sent this to me on WhatsApp, and I thought it's supposed to be funny, a little bit of humor, yes, but it's wow, it's just like, an eye opener for me, anyhow. So, let me just quickly start reading this. It's entitled Life Without Black People. It says a very humorous and revealing story is told about a group of white people who were fed up with African Americans, so they joined together and wished the African Americans away. They passed through a deep, dark tunnel and emerged in sort of a twilight zone where there is an American without Black people. At first, these white people breathed a sigh of relief. At last, they said, no more crimes, drugs, violence, and welfare. All of the Blacks have gone. Then suddenly reality set in. The new America is actually not America at all, only a barren land. Number one, there are very few crops that have flourished because the nation was built on a slave supported system. Number two, there are no cities with tall skyscrapers because Alexander Miles, a Black man, he invented the elevator. And without it, one finds great difficulty reaching higher floors. Number three, there are few, if any, cars because Richard Spikes, a Black man, invented the automatic gear shift. Joseph Gamble, also Black, he invented the supercharged system for internal combustion engines. And Garrett A. Morgan, a Black man, invented the traffic signals. Isn't that awesome? Can you imagine? I went to Germany, and parts of Germany, there's no traffic lights.
Yeah. Wow.
Awesome. Number four, furthermore, one could not use the rapid transit system because its procurer was the electric trolley, which was invented by another Black man, Albert Robinson. Even if there were streets on which cars and the rapid transit system could operate, they were cluttered with paper because an African American, Charles Brooks, invented the street sweeper. There were few, if any, newspapers, magazines, and books because John Love invented the pencil sharpener. William Purves invented the fountain pen. My father would have loved that because your grandfather constantly, that's all he used was a fountain pen. And Lee Barrage invented the typewriting machine, and W.A. Love invented the advanced printing press. They were all, you guessed it, Black. The lawns were brown and wilted because Joseph Smith invented the lawn sprinkler and John Burr the lawn mower. Let me skip down to some of these. Finally, they were resigned to at least have dinner amidst all of this turmoil. But here again, the food had spoiled because another Black man, John Standard, he invented the refrigerator.
Wow.
Now, isn't that something? So you think about what would our lives be like? What would these countries be like? Less these contributions of these great minds, these Black people. And Martin Luther King said it like this, quote, "By the time we leave for work, millions of Americans have depended on the inventions from the minds of Black."
Wow.
That's right. Why do you say wow, Katura?
I think it's, when we think about it, how influential Blacks have been to the world.
Mhm.
Our mark, our imprint is everywhere on every continent.
Everywhere.
Amazing.
Everywhere. And that's this is nothing compared to all the other inventions that we could be here all night and some talking about these great minds. You know what I think about, John, when I say great minds, it makes me think like, what were they thinking? Were they thinking about, what mark can I leave? What
Right.
legacy could I leave? I think maybe they were also thinking about, what changes could I make? And I was thinking before the episode started, I thought to myself that, think to ourselves tonight is, I'm hoping that at the ending of this episode, all of us can say to ourselves, what do I want to do? What mark do I want to leave?
Right.
With whatever I have, right? So I might not be able to invent, the refrigerator, right? I'm not mechanical, but what can I do? It's all of us asking ourselves, what can we do to change our world?
Right.
Right. And it might not even go further than your nation, further than your family, further than, your country, but at least we can make a change. And that's what I'm thinking of. I remember some of these themes, how they would say that back in the day that, blacks, we were mentally challenged, so to speak, right? That, we had an issue with our IQ. We weren't all there. But tonight we're seeing that I wish we had a list of just how many inventions, numbers, but it's too many to say tonight. Of course, too many to count, and I'm sure there were some that were not even recorded. But that just proves wrong that blacks did not have something that was wrong with our brains, you name it. We weren't culturally evolved, all this kind of
Yeah.
stuff they were talking about. And today we can prove them wrong because we have this testament, and we also can continue some great legacies tonight.
Absolutely.
Uh, Go
Pastor,
ahead.
I was
Mhm.
on a conversation today. I'm getting ready to be part of a panel dealing with for Black men as a part of the Black Professionals Network that I have with my company.
Mhm.
And there was a series of questions that we were getting ready to go through, and they talked about, what would we say to someone who doesn't believe in
Excuse me.
one? Well, what would we say to someone who doesn't believe in the oppression or oppression itself of Black people, the Black culture? But then also, what would we say to people who say that the Black race is inferior? And as you were reading through that and just listening to the quote from Martin Luther, I would struggle to think and to believe, and to any young person or elder person out there who might think, maybe you've heard this throughout your life, or it's been kind of pressed into your psyche, your psychological makeup, or your way you perceive the Black culture.
Mhm.
We're not inferior. And your question that you ask, what were they thinking? I wish I knew, but all I can say is I do know that they are proving that we as Black people are not inferior. Last week I gave the statistic that talks about the education system and how in the gifted classes it's more
Yeah.
predominantly those that are white or of a different culture, and yet those that are in the class that they attribute for those that are challenged, the students who are not doing so well, we have on the opposite end a lot more in terms of Black people. And that systematic attack against the Black culture, but against the Black person, uh,
Yep.
making us seem as if we're inferior because look, there's more of us in the challenge who are not doing as well, or what they perceive to be. I think these inventions, I think these inventors, and these that we're going to talk about today, as well as so many that we cannot talk about all in one setting, prove that that is absolutely, completely further from the truth than anything else. It
That,
is clear we are not an inferior race by any means, no matter how many times throughout history we have been treated as such, and being slaves and all that stuff. It still proves that we were not an inferior race. So thank you so much for bringing that. I think that was really powerful for us to know that you
that's
really
right.
can't go a
Great point.
day without experiencing something that a Black person has had a hand in terms of inventing. And we hope today to talk about that for some of you who may never have heard that before.
That's right. So Black history, as we're looking at it, is, and we've read and done a little bit of research anyways, and it's so much more than just slavery.
That's right.
So much more than Martin Luther King Jr., Malcolm X, there's so much more. And when you think about the minds of these people, and you think about they were persistent, I'm thinking about
Yes.
the traits that they had. What are you thinking, Katura?
It's funny that you were mentioning that because as Jonathan, as you were talking just
Hmm.
about, us not being, an inferior race, I think it's important to note that these inventors, these men and women of purpose who pioneered so many, whether it's inventions or pioneered the way in, the civil rights movement, there had to be a certain level of intentionality,
Yes,
perseverance,
yes.
that they realized that there was a purpose in what they were called to do. And if they were to simply, believe in, some of the prevailing thoughts of the day, of the time, they certainly would not have done what they were called to do or stepped into the role that they were supposed to step into.
Hmm.
And it just speaks to having a made up mind, really and truly, and not just a mind, from, a psychological perspective, but also a mind in, in deed, in action, right? Making up, you know, having a purposeful walk and a purpose in, from the moment they woke up, they decided and they purposed in their hearts, in their spirits, in their minds that they had to fight against oppression. And that was oppression, on a personal level. Some of them, we talked about before, Harriet Tubman, that, can you imagine
I
trying
can't.
to escape from your slave masters and trying to, free other slaves, and then to go back and try to get your family to come into freedom? To have that kind of perseverance is it's significant.
Yes, and as
And
you talk
so,
about
yeah,
purpose, I think it's the purpose that's driving them.
that's it.
That it drives them from one day to the next day to the next day until you have weeks
Absolutely.
and months and years. That's what drives them. And I think, and as you are alluding to, every single one of us have a purpose.
That's right.
Every single one of us, and along with the purpose, I think that we have to also remember to not compare ourselves with each other. So
I love that.
the one that created invented the refrigerator,
Mhm.
but there's also somebody that invented the mop. And
Right.
look how important the mop is, because not everybody can go on their knees anymore and wash floors. Do you know what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
Right? Because sometimes I think people tend to compare themselves, and no, my input is not going to be as great as this person that did this, so I'm not going to do anything. But talking to this generation and to anybody that's hearing this, please do not compare yourselves to anybody. Do you, right? With your passion, your drive, your vision. They had this vision, they had this dream of what it would be like. And today, some of them have not really lived to see, right, the extent of it. But look at us today. We're talking about it today, 2020, what year now? 22, right?
I'm just wondering too, that now that you said that also, Mom,
Mhm.
what goes into, a person's psyche? What makes them different? Was Harriet Tubman different from me? You know,
Mm.
was, Martin Luther King, was he different from you, Jonathan? We look at these different people. What possessed them to want to push against the grain? What was in them that made them? I really don't believe that, it's a hypothetical question that I'm asking, but I really don't believe that they were any different from you and I. I
Mhm.
think each of us has a position to play where we too have to fight against the grain,
Mhm.
and we also have to stand up for what we believe is right, our moral system, our moral compass,
Mhm.
fighting for our rights in places that we are not given rights. Whether that's as women, as a Black woman, how can I stand up like Rosa Parks and fight against the grain? She's not any better than I am. She doesn't possess anything, deeper than myself. But I
Mhm.
think it really goes back to, making up your mind to say, what can I do to leave a mark? What is my legacy? How
Yes.
can I make a difference where
Yeah.
there is none?
Yes.
So talking about
And
the
yeah.
comparison, I mean, it's easy to say that, man, this person, was a doctor, or they have their degree and they're much more intelligent. It doesn't take all that.
Mm-mm. Mm-mm.
Yeah.
Speaking up enough is to make a difference. So
That's right.
Well, I think there's a couple of things that when you look at all of these great people, there are a couple of attributes that all of them share. Whether you're
mhm,
going from the Martin Luther Kings, the Malcolm X's, the Hurricane Carters, whatever it is, all the way through. One, they had to get fed up with the situation
yes,
that it is,
absolutely.
and if you're going to be a person that is, hey, it is what it is. Let's learn to just adjust to the injustices,
Mhm.
and it's just always been that way. Black people have always been at the bottom, or
Right.
those type of mentalities that
It is what it is.
Yes. Yes.
like how could you expect a black man to be the CEO? How could you expect a black man to own a professional team? How could you expect this? These thoughts that continue to do it. Well, of course that guy got shot. He looked like a gangster.
Yeah.
Things like that. That if you're going to have those mentalities, you can't rise to the occasion that these people did. They definitely all got to a point where they were fed up with the situation as it was, and then you have to have some sense of commitment. A lot of people struggle with being committed to things today. They might
Yeah.
get caught up in the wave of a thing, the charismatic. So, unfortunate to say it this way, a situation happens potentially in the United States, and a young man or a young woman or somebody gets shot. Now we're all ready for the march, right?
Right.
All shoved in. We're all ready for the march. We're gonna march. The Black Lives Matter. Everything is going to be ready, and we're going to get into that. But being committed to have that fight for the rest of your life, being committed to have those conversations for the rest of your life, I don't
Wow.
know if we are. These people showed that they were ready to have those fights, to have those discussions, to
Mhm.
be able to do whatever their form of resistance was. They were willing to have that for the rest of their life, and
Right.
and to do that, it takes you having a mindset. I remember hearing Bishop Lambert Gates many years ago preach the message that you've got to kind of prepare yourself for when the situation comes up, right? And he gave the example of how we would train as little kids to in the event of a fire or in the event of a tornado, what is your stuff that you're going to do? Do we teach our kids, if you experience this type of racism, what are you going to say? How are you going to handle it? Or are
Yeah,
we
I don't think we do. I don't think we
right?
do.
We teach them just to be quiet. Hey, you know what? It is what it is, right? There are certain phrases that we say that we
Mhm.
help our sometimes help perpetuate the situation.
Yeah.
For an example, almost every black child in North America, from Canada to the United States, has heard this point. You got to be twice as good to get half as far, right? That's across the board. Almost every child that has been at least born or living here in North America has experienced this, and so it automatically puts in, okay, I have got to recognize that I am not equal to them. I've got to work harder, and it's unfortunate because our parents would say it because it tends to be the reality of the situation, right? We
Mhm.
don't get those second chances. We do oftentimes have to prove ourselves more than our white counterparts, and vice versa. But it also still keeps the system and the mentality that we're inadvertently also teaching them. You're not equal, so you got to be better so that you can get
Right.
half. And
Right. Good point.
so these are things that if we're going to make the change, you have to actually commit from a young age. You have to commit to having those kind of conversations and those thoughts for the rest of your life. I don't think it just goes away, the next 2-3 years, because we
Hmm.
keep seeing, even after the
Arbery.
shooting, Ahmaud
Yeah.
Arbery shooting, there's another, guy from FedEx, right? There's another situations that are still happening. So to think that just because something happens atrocious and we see it in the media and all of a sudden that affects an immediate drastic change, not necessarily, but it is good that we're having the conversations and we do have to
Right.
continue to have that conversations. So I think, yeah, getting fed up with where we're at and the situation as it is, and being committed to having that fight for the rest of your life. Those are two things that I think every one of those, I'm going to call them forefathers of civil rights or whatever you want to call it,
Hmm. Hmm.
they all possess for sure.
So I have
Right.
a question. Sorry. You just
Mhm.
said something that made me think.
Eh,
Do you think that it's a possibility that maybe we're not as fed up as we should be? Because if we were really fed up about something,
mhm,
it's hard to stay quiet. It's
mhm,
hard to not speak up. So I think sometimes we've just become so complacent.
mhm.
We talked about that's just the way that it is.
Yeah.
Um, I think in our complacency, we're also adapting to the injustices that we're facing, and
Mhm.
we're not um, giving ourselves space to really feel. I think I've heard this before, and at first I was just like, where this thought of Black people, whether it's in America, Canada, around the world, do have a form of PTSD, right? Where, we're just dealing with the trauma of, um, what our forefathers have faced because it has trickled down from generation to generation.
Mm.
Whether that's how we see the world, our perspective on how we see the world, and how others see the world on us. I do think that maybe sometimes we've gotten to a place where we're not as angry at things, you know, we're not as upset as we should be. And I
That's right.
think now with this whole Black Lives Matter movement that started, what was it, 2 years ago almost?
Mm.
It's given now space for him to be like, yeah, absolutely, I deserve more pay, or I gotta do this. But should it have taken all that?
Mm.
Well, here's what I'm going to say to answer your question, or at least what comes to my mind first. I'm not going to say it's the official answer by any means. One, I think complacency is a product of two things. I do think, in one sense, we have become complacent, and I'll speak from the Canadian Afro community perspective. In one sense, we have become complacent. We seem to not be as militant as our forefathers were. And maybe that's partially because there doesn't seem to be as many injustices or as overt
Overt, yeah.
injustice, right? I've never seen police taking hoses and hosing down black people in the streets of
Right.
Toronto,
True.
like beating us and dogs and stuff of those things that we see these what we classify as horrific images. But it almost seems as that was the time back then, right? And again, in conversation that I'm having on this outside of just this platform, we find that, especially here again in the Afro Canadian community, racism is not as
Overt.
overtly spoken, but it's in the actions, right? Let's go back again to the same example I brought. Why are more black kids in the challenged classes and not in the gifted classes? When we're clearly seeing there's so many inventions coming from black people.
Mhm.
So
Yep.
we're clearly not inferior from a mentality perspective. So we're certainly not having those issues. But why is that? That's a form of racism that's being perpetuated in the system, but it doesn't come across negatively as overt
Yes.
racism, right?
We don't see people hanging from trees
Yeah, we
in
don't see some of those things. I remember
classes.
one time I was driving, and I know I was definitely doing the speed limit. I saw other people doing their speed limits faster than me, and the police came and started following me in my vehicle. And I remember saying, "Okay, I'm going to just test this." So also I just made a right turn off into a side street. Of course, he recognized, okay, I can't pretend anymore. And so all of a sudden I go, whoop whoop. He stops me, pulls me over, and he cards me. Right? He asked for my license. There was no reason for him to stop me. He admits that. Then starts asking me what I do for my job and trying to
Wow.
get information, things like that they
Mm.
go through that are a form of segregation, racism that are aimed towards Black people, but they're just not as overt. So I
Right.
think we are more complacent because we don't see it as overt. And then I
Mhm.
also think, and I'm not again attacking anyone particularly, but I think the society and the media today has done an overboard job at trying to um, sometimes confuse us into blindness and to make us think it's not that bad. For an example, if we're having a conversation about black men and the struggle, somehow that is going to somehow the focus point will get shifted. They'll shift
Mm.
not just to say black woman, but now you start, you notice how they start throwing in the LGBTQ community as if we're somehow
Right.
into this, and
Group
now it's
together,
all
yeah.
lives matter. And so the media does all this stuff that just kind of dissuades from the point. We're talking about black men being shot down from police, and yet there will be a bigger, larger conversation that takes
Absolutely.
away from the focus of what's happening. And so it's hard for you to figure out what is it that I'm going to be militant about? What is it that we need to go and really address? And so I think, yes, we are more complacent because we have been lulled into the sense that things are not as bad as it used to be. It's getting better, and I may not see it in my lifetime, but
Yeah.
we're getting
Yeah.
there, right?
Yes. Yes.
Good
Um,
point.
but the reality is that the steps are actually very small, and I'll bring this point. I know we've got some people to talk about today, but sometimes even as black people we are also perpetuating the system, right? I remember
Yes.
I'm in hiring situations, and I have interviews, and I may see a black person. I remember one individual that was coming for an interview with me, and I remember someone else that was on the board with me that I would be hiring to work for me directly said, "Hey, tell him he should take out the Afro pick out of his hair," right?
Mm.
As if that would be a bad sign, right? And make him less. I can see these Caucasian people coming in, their hair is not necessarily combed, or maybe whatever
Right.
their hair may look like, or whatever they bring. But the black person who has an Afro pick in his hair, somehow that's not the image of
Mhm.
someone that should be hired. right? It's these little microaggressions, these little things that we don't recognize contribute still to the segregation, the racism, things that
But
we're
I feel to that point, I do feel that that is also, we blacks now, we try to make space and room for the feelings of non-blacks. And by that I mean is we try to be politically correct, or I don't want to sound too black. I don't want to make this person feel uncomfortable. I find myself even doing that on a professional level where
Are you talking about Afro Canadians,
Afro
Black
Canadians,
Canadians?
absolutely just blacks, right? Like I
Yeah.
just find even for myself where, I could be, at work, for example, and I may have a t-shirt that'll say, I have a t-shirt that says millennial melanin queen or black queen.
Hmm.
And I'll choose to be like, you know what? I shouldn't wear it to work because I don't want anyone to feel uncomfortable that I'm
Right, right.
highlighting my my melanated skin.
Excuse me. Mhm.
When I mean, I wear my skin every day of the year. I don't have to feel comfortable to celebrate it. You know what I'm
good
saying?
point. Good point.
Or I noticed too where, because I'm the only black person on my entire floor of
Wow.
groupings of, it's one of those like cooperated buildings where, you have different companies that come in. And I'm the only black person. So when I see a black person, I'm like, hey, like I'm extra because I'm like, we're in the fight. You know what I mean? But I find that sometimes I give so much space to non-blacks, whether it's the Caucasian community, that I'm not really walking in my truth. Like, I love sometimes wearing my hair in its natural state, with a twist
Mhm.
out or
Yeah.
whatever. And I find that, sometimes I'll kind of pull back because I'm just like, they're going to ask a lot of questions,
That's
or
it. Wow.
do you get what I'm saying? So sometimes
Yeah.
we give
Yeah.
so much space that we're really not walking in the truth of who we are as Black people.
That's
So
right.
you're talking about Jonathan taking out the Afro pick or not doing the Afro. No, I'm very proud of who I am. We got to step into that and not be ashamed of it without
Hmm.
being so politically correct that we're not walking in, the space that we need to create for ourselves.
Right. And one of our viewers says it's true. It's crazy how much we have to be so cautious even
Yes.
about celebrating our blackness. I
Right.
remember when our church a couple years ago started to say, okay, when Bishop said, okay, yeah, we're gonna have a Black History Month. I was just like,
Right.
right, because I'm thinking, like, oh
Do we
man,
want to? Do we want to celebrate? We don't want
we
to be
really
too
want to celebrate. Yeah, do
We
we
want to
want to
isolate the
big,
people that are not black in the church.
right.
right? Yeah, so all these things, that we tend to be so cautious about. And another viewer, I think, was saying that, yeah, I think we are a little bit too complacent, and Canadians on a whole, we're like that, right? Compared to our counterparts, our neighbors rather to the south, right? They're more will stand up, they're more in your face, you know what I mean? And so that's a part of their culture, whereas
Right.
Canadians, it's very different. It's very different. So this is really good conversation, things for us to really think about. Coming back to the contributions of some of these amazing people, I want to highlight Alice H. Parker. Alice H. Parker. So she was born 1919 in New Jersey, and she just had a dream. And I want us to think about that, because sometimes we have dreams, and I don't mean that we go to sleep and we see images, but we just have this dream, these hopes, these desires. We have a vision that we want to do something. And sometimes that's all it takes. And all it took for Alice was that she had this dream of an idea that she would have the very first gas furnace. Gas furnace. Right. So before that, we didn't have there was no central heating system that was even created. Homes were heated by individual fireplaces. I remember when I was in England as a child, yeah, we used the coal, and the fireplace was in the basement, and we would warm up the house with fireplace. As a matter of fact, at times, that's a picture of Alice Parker. And at times the bed was so cold. I remembered that back in England. I hope I'm not dating myself, but however, what we would do is put stones in the fire. And when the stones got hot, then you brought the hot stones up and put them in your bed to warm up the beds. And so, you know, you think about these people, where they're coming from and their contribution. And sometimes, you know, we're all enjoying now, especially those of us in the North, we're enjoying our furnaces, we're enjoying the heat that comes up into the home, right? We don't have to have individual little fireplaces or individual little heaters, but you can just go inside the home. I look forward when I come home, yep, that heat goes up and the whole house is being warmed. And so her designs were officially patented on December 23rd, 1919. All right, so that's when she was patented. So she was one of the first African American women to even receive a patent. So even though her designs were not necessarily implemented, but they gave us the very first conception of central heating. So without her design, without her patent, we would never have developed forced air furnaces, both of which we certainly enjoy today. So let's give it up for Alice Parker. Woo, woo, woo.
Well done.
Amazing, amazing. Yep, go ahead.
No, I was just saying, well done. Thank you so much. I
Yes.
appreciate it. That's
Yes. And I didn't know that before, right? And I'm sure somebody here might not have known that before. So now we, you know, when you're in your homes and you're getting the heat is on, I can feel, I'm comfortable in my home, feel the nice heat. Yeah, we can say, okay, thanks, Alice, you know, way to go. And it started with a dream. And I'm just putting that out there, right? It's like, how many of us have a dream? Yeah, I really want to do this. I really want to do that. And as you said, I think it was Jonathan, you're saying that, you know, sometimes we just have to follow that. We just have to be persistent. We have to just never give up that fight, never give up. So even if we don't get that far, but somebody can take it from where we leave it, somebody can take it further and help our dream to come to fruition. Keturah, what do you have?
I love that. Well, I wanted to actually just highlight a man who I didn't know that I needed until I needed him. Dr. Charles Drew, actually, he is a physician that was very, what's the word I would say? He fought for the preservation of blood, and not just, any blood, but the preservation of African American blood. He certainly fought for, because at the time they did not, hospitals in America did not want to preserve Black blood. And so he fought for, absolutely. He fought for African Americans to be able to donate their blood and to preserve it. At the time, they were not doing so. And so he's very prominent in that, as you can see. He was born in June of 1904. Very educated man. He went to McGill University. And this man, it's funny because we looked at him, we were like, is he Black? We're not sure. He kind of mixed or whatever. But this man, it's funny to mention that in that time, I mean, the one drop rule was very prevalent. He certainly felt that. But as a Black man, he fought, during the war, and he was able to certainly fight for the preservation of African American blood, but also for plasma supply networks to be run. And so, and the reason why I said I didn't know that I needed him, myself, whether it's giving blood or, receiving blood for some patients, to be able to preserve blood for a period of time is very essential in healthcare. So we honor you, Dr. Charles Drew, and for what you fought for and for Black people.
And Keturah, you mentioned a one-drop rule. Can you explain that for our viewers who may not know what that means? What is the one-drop rule?
I mean, I learned this in school, but I don't want to go into too much detail, but the one-drop rule was if you had a one drop of African American blood, you were considered Black, even though many Blacks could pass for whites. We know through slavery, there was, on the plantations, there was, a lot of raping. The masters would rape slaves and they would come out with, of course, biracial children. But even though they could pass for Black, they were still pass for white. They were still considered to be Black, even generations down the line. If they could trace, let's say it was a grandparent that was Black who may have married someone that was white, and maybe their children married someone white, right? And their children married someone white. As long as there was that Black that was in there, they were still recognized as Black.
So even if there were 1/4, 1/8,
absolutely,
16th, they were still considered to be black.
Correct. And they were noted on ledger. So, I mean, can you imagine?
And they didn't have a choice in the matter to say no, no, I choose to be, right? Like today, now people have a choice in the matter of their gender, of their this, of their that. You know what I mean? They didn't have a choice in the matter, right? 1/16, one drop of black, they say you're black. Wow.
Correct.
And that's why I wanted us to explain that, because again, here's a system that was used to kind of, I don't want to say protect, but try to, at least in the mentality of those that are Caucasian, to protect the purity of the race, right? So even though they could certainly look, they could pass for someone who is white, and maybe they themselves have had no real connection to the person that was black in their own family, or at least what would
Mhm.
consider complete black, whatever. But yet it was a way to say, "Whoa, you're there's something wrong with you. You should be almost ostracized, right? You should be. Let me make sure you don't consider yourself to be exactly like me, right? Because
Wow.
you have one drop of black in there." And it's always fun when you kind of see those, those reveals when they do the looking at the back,
Ancestry.
ancestry, right, and see
Mhm.
like race supremacists, and all of a sudden find out they have some kind of African heritage. It's always amazing to kind of see that. But it's interesting, and I only bring it up because I guess my question that I would pose to you and to the audience that is watching, has it really changed, right? Has it really changed? If we have someone who's biracial, do we really see them as white? If just because they relate to being white, do we see them as black? I know when all my life I've always accepted to me that if somebody was mixed in any way, well then with the black people we just take them. Like it's like, okay, you're on our team by virtue of you having black. And when we see them kind of closer to the white side, it's almost seen as a betrayal. Like, yo, bro, but you're black. Like,
True. So
Yeah,
true.
that's true.
Yeah.
But
why are you with that white girl? You're black. Like, there's always this
Yeah.
mentality that I say that, has it really changed? Has the 1% rule actually really changed? Or do we? Because I know I've heard many black people say this. Oh, no, there's some black in her. So she's black, right? So don't go ahead trying to pretend like you white all of a sudden. You black, right? And
Right.
so the 1% rule is in effect still, I think, to this day.
I
Yes.
do think though that I think that biracial in of itself is its own category, right? Like, so it's because what you're saying is we do it all the time, whether we realize it, we're not doing it, we are, right? But I think we have to create its own category, and the reason why I say that is if we say that they're black, they are really, if you think about it, denying the other side. So whether it's black, white, or Asian, they're denying that side. And I think it's important that we create that space for them. But also on the other flip side is a biracial, let's say it's black and white mix. I don't know if they would be fully accepted by one side or the other, depending on maybe mannerisms,
Mhm.
speech, you know what I mean?
Their
So
hair texture.
hair texture,
Remember
depending
we
one
had,
side may not choose another.
yeah, we had one of my guests was biracial, and she talked about the situation there, and specifically Cassandra Walton, and she did talk about that. Yeah, but again, we're going to get into some nitty gritty when we start saying, like, okay, we have to create a slot for biracial people, right? Because so if you're going to be black and Chinese, black and this, black and that, white and this, white and Chinese, white and you know what I mean? Maybe people can just pick, those individuals need to just decide that, yeah, you know what? I feel more comfortable. I define myself. I associate more with this
So you're
race.
saying they should pick a side.
Yeah, I guess so.
I don't know if they have to. I think
That's what I'm
ultimately
saying.
it must be where they don't have to. Like, why should we? Right? Some people talk
Right.
about it in terms of the structure.
So you say so you're basically saying biracial then is just once you have the
A
two,
mix, you're mixed.
just a mix.
I mean, I play organ and I play keyboard. Sometimes people want to say you're an organist, so someone might say you're a keyboardist or pianist.
that
I'm
denies
both.
your other skill.
I'm all of it. It depends on what I need to be at the moment.
Mhm.
But I mean, yeah, it's a deeper conversation.
It is. It certainly
Yeah.
I
is.
don't
Yeah.
have the time.
Yeah.
But I think I think it's just really important that our audience kind of understood that from you, Katira, from the doctor there, because I mean, initially when I saw a picture at first, you all heard me when we were kind of going through our deliberation. At the first
Yeah.
look, I was like,
Yes.
"You black, right?" Like he starts looking at certain things and say,
There's got to be some black in him, right?
so there's these little things that we still have today that we still have to work at
Yeah.
yeah. All right.
What about your person, John?
Well, actually, I have two people that I kind of want to briefly talk about. First, the first person that I'll just kind of briefly talk about. I know it's kind of funny or whatever it is, but there's a lady by the name of Miss Christina Jenkins, and she's from Louisiana, and she eventually migrated out to Ohio. But she's actually the inventor of the weave and the sew-in. And I just thought that would be
Okay.
cool invention to talk about. So many people, blacks and whites and Asians,
That's correct.
all races are this day and age now are doing weaves and sew-ins. So she invented that. She invented that. You can certainly do a look at that for her, Christina M. Jenkins, who invented that. And then I also wanted to talk about Mary Van Britten Brown. And in 1966, she was living in Queens, New York, with her husband, and oftentimes, her husband was away from home working, and so she spent many of her nights home alone in Queens, New York, while her husband was away, and she felt unsafe, right, because of the high rates of crime in her neighborhood. And really, on top of that, the police were often unreliable and unresponsive. And that kind of speaks to the issue that Black people have had to deal with, where not only do we not trust the police, but sometimes they're unresponsive, certain areas, or because it's a Black community, they would not respond. So one of the things is Mary Van Britten Brown, she created a device that would help her put her mind at ease. And she's actually credited with attributing with really coming up with the security systems before there were ever fixtures in the home. So she invented a system that used a camera that could slide in and look through 4 peepholes in her front door. The camera's view would then appear on a monitor in the home. And so she could survey any potentially unwanted guests that might be coming up to her door. And then she also added other features to that system that she had. So she included a microphone to speak to anyone at the door, a button to unlock the door, a button to contact the police. So her and her husband, they took out a patent for the system in that same year of 1966. And in 1993 or 1969, they were awarded that patent 3 years later.
Awesome.
So when we look at that, home security systems that are commonly used today, they took these elements from her design. And that was invented, again, out of a need, of a situation of feeling safe, recognizing the police were not going to be able to do it. And now to this day, I think it was like last week, Monday, my best friend was showing me how he had installed a security system that has a camera, and he's looking on his phone and he's moving the camera, he's talking, he's unlocking. We actually have her to say thank you for that. So I want to say thank you to those two ladies, Mary Van Britten Brown, for the security systems that allow us to feel more safer in our homes. And then, of course, to Christina M. Jenkins, for all of the ladies who've been able to put a nice weave and a sew into. I want to say thank you also to her for her inventions. Those are two things that, hey, we don't think about them as much, but man, how thankful are we, in fact, for both of these inventions that they did. So
why you say thank you? Your wife doesn't need a weave, doesnk wear.
I say thank you because how many people have gone to the stores, have bought it, and helped themselves look proper. Hairline might be receding now, but whatever it is, I still say thank you. And I see that in the chat, people are saying awesome. People are saying bless her heart. So I'm thankful for that. But certainly the security. I mean, being a husband, I'm always concerned about the security when I'm not in the house for whatever the reason might be. So I'm thankful to especially for the security perspective and making sure that we're safe. So yeah, those are my two inventors. People you've heard before, but two really, really, really great inventions.
Wow. Well, I gave one. I've got one more. How's our time? Can I give one more?
Yeah, go ahead.
Katura, you can give one more. His name is Otis Boykin. Otis Boykin. I never could pronounce that word, but Otis Boykin. So it talks about that his greatest contribution came in 1964. So here's a story, my own personal story experience behind this. Just before COVID, there was a brother that asked me, an older gentleman, that asked me to go to the doctors with him. He's an older man, and he wanted me to sit with him and talk with the doctor because the doctor was insisting that he needed this equipment. And so he needed a pacemaker. So the doctor, really sharp doctor, very intelligent lady. That's her specialist. She specializes. So she took a picture of the heart and was showing me all kind of, this upper chamber, lower chamber, and all these. So anyways, after talking to her, listened to her, she's letting me know that if this gentleman does not get a pacemaker, he will eventually have a heart attack and die.
Wow.
But so the gentleman was kind of timid. He wasn't too sure, he didn't really want the pacemaker because he wasn't educated as to, how's it going to work, et cetera, et cetera. And so I still did not convince him or tell him whichever way. It was still his choice. I still left it up to him, but I did break it down somewhat to him. And I told him that, yes, the doctor is saying this, and this is what it means, etc. So it leads me to Otis Boykin, because it talked about that his greatest contribution in 1964 is when he created a control unit for pacemakers.
Wow.
Right? So this is small devices that help to regulate the heartbeat that would administer electrical stimulation. And this is so important. I think about, wow, all the lives that he has saved. He's born in Dallas, Texas. He went to college. He was interested in working in electronics. And I think about how many young people, how much individuals that are good with electronics. And you just never know how God can inspire you working in your field. So he was working in electronics, and Boykin he started to develop this special interest in what they call resistors. So resistors, what they do, they slow the flow of electricity. So they allow a small amount of electricity to move through a device. And so in 1959, he patented this wire precision resistor, which would allow specific amounts of electrical currents to flow for a specific purpose. And hence now, this is how we have his contribution, where he could create that control unit for pacemakers. And I thought, when I read this, I'm going to talk about this because I know the importance of pacemakers. Some their heartbeat is very irregular. And so putting a pacemaker in would regulate the heartbeat and simply save a life. So give it up for Otis Boykin. And I mean, he's done so much after that, because he talks about, it said soon after he also created a different type of a resistor that would withstand shifts in temperature and air pressure. So that, they said, it was a huge breakthrough. And he worked with televisions, IBM computers, you name it. But just smart and intelligent. And as you said, John, it just defeats the whole purpose that Blacks were mentally, insufficient. We weren't there. This is not true. This is definitely not true. So that's Otis Boykin introduced. For those of you who don't know him, I wanted to bring him to the forefront. Let's give it up for him, Otis Boykin.
Excellent. Well done.
I just wanted to bring my last person. I'm sure majority, if not all of us, have heard of this wonderful man by the name of George Washington Carver, who was an American agricultural scientist. We know that he's attributed, quite frankly, with peanut butter, but understanding the importance of the peanut butter, really what he was, promoting was using alternative crops. So, cotton, because you can imagine the constant picking of cotton was damaging the soil. And so what he did, he was developing different methods to prevent soil depletion. And in doing so, he really just fought for the farmers, and he was pushing for these farmers to develop other means of growing different crops,
Mm.
which in turn brought about peanut butter. So it wasn't just saying, oh, he just made peanut butter happenstance. No, he really was focusing on soil depletion, and he really just developed other inventions that was really to assist farmers to restore and really cultivate other different means of crops, other crops such as sweet potatoes, peanuts, and really just improve the quality of life for those crops. And what's important to note, that he's not necessarily, and I say this, there's a back and forth whether he really developed peanut butter, but what is a fact is he developed 300 different uses for peanuts. So,
Wow.
yeah, over 300 different uses for peanuts, including chili sauce, shampoo, shaving cream, and glue.
Really?
Yes. So he was a great pioneer in the agricultural world. Um, and so again, his main drive and passion was for Black farmers to really know how to avoid soil depletion. And he helped bring about different inventions to assist farmers and
Mm.
also developing different uses for the peanut. So
Wow.
thank you, Mr. Carver, because we love
Yes.
us peanuts. So
None.
Yes. Yes. Some gentlemen. All
yes,
right. And I love peanut butter.
absolutely.
I can just go into, the peanut butter and just with a spoon, a whole tablespoon all by itself. If I feel hungry and I don't want the carbs, and y'all know that I'm trying to avoid too much carbs these days, I just just go into it. Just take a spoon of peanut butter,
Yeah.
and the way I go, my tummy feels fine. And so thank you, sir. Wow. And the ending of my story, somebody might be wondering, well, did this individual get the pacemaker? Yes, they did get the
Awesome.
pacemaker. And he is so, so, so very happy today that he did get the pacemaker, and grateful for me accompanying him to his doctor's appointment. All right. Well, this has been awesome. And it makes me, in closing, I'm just thinking of what do they all have in common, as we talked about that. And one of the things that I think we can also highlight is they saw a need. Simply
Right.
put, there was a need. And today, 2022, look around, ladies and gentlemen, look around. Where is there
A
a
need.
need? It's my husband always says, oh wow, you've got so much ideas, you come up with all these ideas, but sometimes it's a need, that we just need to John, you said, we get tired. I'm just tired, right? We get frustrated, we can't handle it no more, we're overwhelmed. And so I'm going to close on that note. For me, that's how I see it. I see, where is there a need? If
Yeah.
you can fill a need, right? If you can see a need, right, then you can always come up with something that you can do. And it doesn't have to be nothing great. Sometimes, the other day I was thinking that I see people are dying, people are losing their spouses, their children, their whatever it is. Maybe you can start a support group
Mhm.
for husbands that have lost their wives. I don't see much of that going on, Jonathan, right? You're talking about men's ministry. There's just so much that we can do,
Yeah.
and to change your world, to change the situation. What can I do? Stop sitting back and just saying, leave it for that person, right? That's not my line, right? If you just have a dream, if you go to bed at night and thinking, yeah, you know what? I need to do something. Something needs to be done. Well, if not you, who? If it's not
Right.
you, who's it going to be? Right? So that's I know we were looking for Black history with the church tonight, but I think this was just as awesome. And we do have a great, really, really good discussion for next week moving forward again. It's our last week in February, but we're going to be here. We're going to be here. My boss, Jonathan, says, yeah, we're going to be here, Mom. We got to do something. So we will be here. Again, we're asking all of you to please share these sessions, because somebody, I'm sure, will get something from it. Jonathan, Katura, I love you folks. Love you guys much. You've made this an amazing evening, and the sessions before and before. And so we're going to pull in more people next week, right, Jonathan? We're going to pull in
Yeah,
some
we're
new
looking to have
faces.
a bigger crew, more people speaking tomorrow or next week. And you're going to certainly want to tune in. We really have some great topics and great questions. And please join us, because we want to hear from you. We're hoping that maybe there might be some questions. We're going to try and push the boundary a little bit, and really ask some questions that perhaps need to be talked about. In terms of our culture, in terms of, again, our Black, not just Black history, but where we're going as a people today, right? What can we do in terms of improving the situation? And of course, this is a Christian programming, so also what that might look like. So we've got so many things that we're going to talk about. Hopefully, we can finish it in one session. If we need to extend it, I'm certain we can possibly look at that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
If we want to, but it's a great topic. So please, as Pastor Pamela Morris has said, please like and share on Facebook, on YouTube. We certainly want to get this out there. I know there's a lot of people wishing that there was a platform where this conversation could be had. Today y'all learned about, we didn't just have weaves. They weren't in the Bible that just came up. Someone had to invent them, right? Security systems. There's so many great inventors that we brought up today and that we brought up last week. And also, what does that mean for us today? Not just to always look back, but what does that mean today, right? How do we make sure that we're not being complacent, but really standing into the future and becoming the giants that we want our children to also.
Yes.
So
yes.
Please join us next week.
Yeah. And don't forget that we do have an email. We've asked before, and we're asking again. Like, if you've got a testimony, or there's an amazing topic out there that you want us to try our best, and maybe just to have a talk, sometimes that's all it takes, is just somebody starts talking about it, right? Then please email us at keepthetestimonyalive@gmail.com. Don't be scared, right? If you want to email us anonymously somehow, create a new email and send an email to us, right? Do that. But we'll try and get it out there, start talking about it. Next week, we want to talk about the church, and, we're going to talk about the church and things that the church did and didn't do and could do better, etc. Those type of things. It's going to be an interesting conversation, and we're going to have some interesting people coming in as our guests on our panel, that we can start the conversation anyways, and hopefully it will be intriguing and inspire somebody. So we hope that this has inspired someone tonight, that you will be the change that the world needs to see. You start with your own world. Your own world is right into your home, to your workplace, maybe to your church, wherever it is, right? But start there, make a change, right, by getting up and doing something. So God bless you tonight. Have a wonderful, wonderful evening or morning or afternoon, wherever you are. We love you. Thank you again for tuning in. See you next week, same time, same place.
Have a good night, everyone.
God bless you, everybody.